The red and blue lights painted my 1967 Mustang like a crime scene at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I stepped onto the porch in my robe, coffee still warm in my hand, and watched two officers approach while the whole neighborhood peeked through curtains. Officer Harlan clicked his pen. Officer Ramirez studied my face. Across the street, Eleanor Whitmore stood on her porch in a silk robe, trembling with what she wanted everyone to believe was righteous fury. "Mr. Barrett," Harlan said, "we need to discuss this vehicle." "I own the street," I told him. "Every inch of Oakmont Drive." Eleanor's voice cut through the night. "He's violated Section 7.3 14 times. Overnight parking is prohibited. I have photographs, timestamps, everything." Ramirez glanced at the Mustang, then at me. "Registration?" I handed over the folder I'd carried for 3 weeks. Inside, 1952 deed, easement agreement, property tax records showing continuous payment for road parcels. Theodore Harlan, my grandfather, sold 42 lots but kept the roads. Transferred to my father in 2008. To me this year. Harlan read, eyebrows climbing. Ramirez whistled low. Eleanor's face went from red to white in the space of a heartbeat. "This is impossible," she said. "The HOA has maintained these roads for decades." "Maintenance isn't ownership," I said. "You've been fining me for parking on property I legally control." The officers exchanged the look cops give when they realize they've been dragged into a civil war. Harlan closed the folder. "Ma'am, this is above our pay grade. HOA disputes go through lawyers, not 911. "But he's breaking rules," Eleanor sputtered. "Rules you don't have authority to enforce," Ramirez said. "We're done here." They left. Eleanor stood frozen on her porch as lights went off up and down the street. The show was over. 3 weeks earlier, I'd pulled into Riverside Estates with everything I owned in the Mustang and a U-Haul. The house at 47 Oakmont needed paint, the lawn needed cutting, and I needed space to write after 15 years in New York. My father's death had left me the house, the car, and a stack of HOA violation notices dating back 6 years. Eleanor appeared the first day, clipboard in hand, smile sharp as winter. "Welcome home, Landon. We have standards." She handed me a 47-page handbook. Grass height, shutter color, garbage can placement, overnight parking. Section 7.3 highlighted in yellow. My Mustang sat in the driveway. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Charming vehicle. Garage it when not in use. We can't have eyesores." "It's not an eyesore," I said. "It's my father's car. Standards apply to everyone," she replied, and walked away. Day 5 brought the first fine. Grass exceeded maximum height. Shutter required repair. Total, $125. I cut the grass, fixed the shutter with an approved vendor, and parked the Mustang on Oakmont Drive overnight. The next morning, another notice. Violation of Section 7.3. $50. I paid nothing. Instead, I went to the basement, found Grandpa's sea chest, and opened the 1952 deed. 47 acres subdivided into 42 lots. Roads retained under private easement. Perpetual. Transferred to heirs. I called Sarah Drummond, real estate attorney. She verified everything. "You own the roads," she said. "The HOA has been operating under a 40-year misunderstanding." I could have told Eleanor then. Instead, I waited. The fines escalated. 14 overnight violations. $2,500 threatened lien. Social media posts called me a rule breaker, a threat to property values. Neighbors avoided eye contact at the mailbox. The first HOA meeting was a circus. Eleanor presented photos, timestamps, emotional appeals to community standards. She moved to expel me. I stood with my folder. "The roads are private property. Here's the deed, the easement, the tax records. Your covenants don't apply." The room went silent. Board members passed documents like hot potatoes. Eleanor's face cycled through disbelief, calculation, fear. "We need legal review," the vice president said. Motion tabled. 3 days later, Eleanor called 911 at 11:30. The officers arrived, verified ownership, cited her for misuse of emergency services. She resigned at 4 a.m. Via email. The board rewrote the handbook. 22 pages, 7-member board, 3/5 vote for major enforcement, mandatory appeals. They refunded my father's fines with interest and a public apology. I turned the basement into a workshop for the Mustang. Neighbors brought coffee, asked questions, apologized. The car show became monthly. Kids sat in the driver's seat, eyes wide. Some nights I sit on the porch, coffee gone cold, stars thick as spilled salt. The Mustang gleams under the streetlight I pay taxes on. Eleanor moved to Arizona. The HOA learned to ask before assuming. My father's car sits where it belongs. On my street. In my neighborhood. Under my rules. The story didn't end with the apology. It grew roots. 6 months later, the HOA held its first open forum. No agenda, no votes, just coffee and conversation. The new president, Beth Lang, stood at the front. We've learned hard lessons, she said. About power, about listening, about what community really means. She introduced me. I didn't want to speak, but Beth insisted. I told them about my father paying fines for parking on his own road. About the night Eleanor called 911. About the folder that changed everything. People cried. Some apologized again. One man, a former board member who'd voted with Eleanor, stood up. I was wrong, he said. I let fear of change make me cruel. I'm sorry. The room applauded, not for me, but for him. For owning a mistake. The handbook shrank to 22 pages. Fines required 3/5 vote. Appeals were mandatory. The board expanded to 7 members, staggered terms, term limits. They even added a clause. Any enforcement action must cite specific, verifiable evidence. I started a newsletter, not official, just neighbors sharing recipes, book recommendations, car tips. Beth shared gardening hacks. Someone posted a photo of my Mustang with the caption, "History in Motion." The car show became monthly. Kids sat in the driver's seat, eyes wide. I told them about my father teaching me to drive stick in that same car. About Grandpa restoring it in the garage that's now my workshop. One evening, a new family moved in at 53. Young couple, 2 kids, nervous about HOA horror stories. I walked over with a plate of cookies and the new handbook. Read this, I said. It's different now. They did. The wife joined the board. The husband helped organize the car show. Eleanor sent a letter from Arizona. Handwritten, no return address. She'd started volunteering at a veterans center. Said she was learning to listen. Asked if I'd forgive her. I wrote back, forgiveness isn't mine to give. It's yours to earn, one day at a time. I kept the letter in the glove box of the Mustang. Some nights I sit on the porch, coffee gone cold, stars thick as spilled salt. The Mustang gleams under the streetlight I pay taxes on. Oakmont Drive stretches quiet and mine. The HOA learned to ask before assuming. My father's car sits where it belongs. On my street. In my neighborhood. Under my rules. The true ending came a year to the day after Eleanor's resignation. The neighborhood threw a block party on Oakmont Drive, my street. Tables stretched from curb to curb, grills smoking, kids chasing fireflies in the dusk. Someone strung lights between the trees. Someone else brought a karaoke machine. Beth Lang stood on a folding chair with a plastic cup of lemonade. 1 year ago, she said, we almost lost what makes this place home. Tonight we celebrate what we saved. She raised her cup. To Landon Harlan, who reminded us that rules serve people, not the other way around. The toast echoed up and down the block. I stood near the Mustang, now polished to a mirror shine, and felt my father's hand on my shoulder though he'd been gone 15 years. Virgil Steedman, 82 and still sharp, raised his beer. Your grandpa would have loved this, he said. He always said the road was for driving, not for fighting over. I laughed, the sound easy in my throat for the first time in months. The kids begged for rides. I let them sit behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, eyes wide as the dashboard lights came on. One girl, maybe 7, asked if the car could fly. I told her it already had, straight out of a nightmare and into this night. Later, when the music slowed and the fireflies thinned, I walked to the end of the street where the new sign stood. Simple wood, hand-carved by the high school shop class. Oakmont Drive, Merritt family since 1952. Below it, smaller letters, community maintained, individually owned. I ran my fingers over the grooves. The wood was warm from the day's sun. Behind me, laughter rose and fell like waves. No one was measuring grass height. No one was counting parking hours. No one was afraid to speak. I thought of Eleanor in Arizona, shaping clay instead of lives. Of Garrett, somewhere far away, learning that consequences have weight. Of my father, who never got to see his fines refunded or his name cleared. I hoped he knew anyway. The Mustang's engine turned over with a low, satisfied growl when I started it for the last ride of the night. I drove the full length of Oakmont Drive, windows down, radio off, letting the neighborhood sounds fill the cab. Kids shouting, a dog barking, someone singing off-key to an old Springsteen song. At the stop sign I paused, looked in the rear view. The street stretched behind me, lights twinkling, people waving. My street. My neighbors. My home. I eased the clutch and rolled forward into the dark, the road smooth under tires that knew every inch by heart. The Mustang carried me home the way it always had, steady, unapologetic, free. Now it's your turn. In the comments, tell me straight. When a clipboard army tries to steal your peace, do you negotiate, litigate, or load truth and let the law sort the wreckage? I read every reply. The porch light's on, the coffee's fresh, and the road's still mine.